What's up? Welcome back. I'm John Stark, MacMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Flintstones. Meet the Flintstones. They're a whatever family. I'm bucking the trend here because this has like a 38 Metacritic score and a 5 on IMDb. Um, and I love this movie, of course, because as if you follow my channel, you would know that I'm a nostalgic person and I have attachments to things that I cannot shake and get rid of for the most part. Every once in a while I watch a film and I'm like, why did I like this movie? Flintstones is not that. I put on the Flintstones and it cheers me up and I'm just like, oh my god, I love this movie. I've seen this movie so many times. So, it's like as a kid, when you're a kid, critics don't show up to you and go, "You're not supposed to like this movie. It's supposed to be bad. Stop liking it." And then you just end up liking it anyway. I remember seeing this like I want to say it was like opening weekend or like a big premiere, and the theater was like jam packed, and it was. I had the feeling that it was like late at night too. Like it was late. It wasn't like a matinee type of thing for me as a kid or anything like that. It was actually like at nighttime, and I was really excited to see the Flintstones, and it did not disappoint. And I've loved it and seen it ever since. There was one point where I remember driving to Universal Studios Orlando, and long ago, way back in the day, when you used to be able to um, just like Universal used to not have the complex that it does. It was literally just the first original Universal Studios, and you basically just kind of pulled up and parked in front of it, and then just kind of like walked in, so you could see Universal from the parking lot. And I remember seeing a house that looked like it was from Bedrock and thinking like, oh my god, are they gonna do like a Flintstones thing here? You know, like that was my like, oh my god. Oh my god. They're gonna put a Flintstone land. They're gonna do it. Of course thinking to myself, like, why isn't there Jurassic Park? Anyway, so yeah, of course there was the Hanna-Barbera ride. So I was sort of right, there's a little bit of Flintstones, but back in the day there was the Hanna-Barbera ride at Universal Studios. So I wasn't totally let down, but I was so excited for that. Yeah, I know, people go there now and you're like, wait a minute, you used to be able to park where? It's hard to imagine it, but uh, way back in the day, there used to be a parking lot much closer to Universal, like where there is the whole sort of Universal, uh, I don't know, shopping area that's outside of it. Anyway, whatever. So, um, this is John Goodman as Fred Flintstone, Rick Moranis as Barney Rubble. We've got Elizabeth Perkins as Wilma, Rosie O'Donnell as Betty Rubble. We've got Kyle MacLachlan playing a villain and having way too much fun with this role for his own good. Halle Berry playing the cleverly named Sharon Stone. And she's actually like really good at what she's doing here. It's such an underrated performance, but she's it makes such a case for her to be like a Bond girl or something at some point. You know, it's this very sort of breathless, I know I'm sexy and I own it performance from her. I really enjoy her in this. And we have Elizabeth Taylor in her final film playing Wilma's mother. She came out of retirement for this. They donated some money to her AIDS charity and like made a big fuss for her when she landed for Dame Elizabeth Taylor. This is her final film. Earlier I did in the thing, I did the final film of Audrey Hepburn, which was Always. Steven Spielberg produced this movie, so he seems to be able to get actresses out of the woodwork for things. So he was a producer, but he didn't direct this. And one of the things I love about the Flintstones is, first of all, I did watch this with audio description. We'll get to that in a second. Uh, it is the practical sets. They actually built the set. It's not green screen. This movie doesn't look like ass that way because you can actually see it looks real. Like there's a set that's built and lived in. So it's one of the reasons I really love Hook too, is because Steven back in the day used to actually take the time to make these things, to actually get in there and do things and make the set to Jurassic Park and make the set to the Flintstones, make the set to Hook, make these fantastic imaginative sets instead of just relying on computers to do the work. They did use some computer CGI for the saber-toothed tiger, but a lot of the other creatures are all from Jim Henson's, you know, and Muppet Factory is the wrong word, but were all made by the Jim Henson Company. So, uh, so it again, it looks great. It looks solid, and I know it did okay at the box office. Like, it wasn't a total box office bomb. It's not like a huge box office hit. It's obviously not a movie that critics are supposed to like. Yeah, the plot is kind of basic or whatever, but also it is a kid's movie. It's an adaptation of the Flintstones. Like, I don't know why we expected, you know. I think like nowadays with Barbie, like you look at Barbie and you go, oh, well, we could have had that. And it's like, I guess, but that's not where we were headed in '94. You know, I mean, if you look at like Richie Rich, which I also love, I think is an enjoyable movie from a kid's perspective. Um, those movies worked for me for the audience it was intended for, which was families, by making kids interested in the Flintstones or Richie Rich. And I was familiar with the Flintstones cartoon. I did watch that, where I was less familiar with Richie Rich as an entity. So, lots of little Easter eggs throughout. Like Barney, at one point is playing. He's got a snow cone thing, and it plays the Jetsons theme song. There are people who did voice work in the original animated series that pop up in cameos here, like Harvey Korman, who's doing the voice of the bird, was also the voice of the Great Gazoo. There are, there's just a lot of little interesting things throughout. They do the Twinkle Toes thing for the bowling, which I'm sure was kind of a pain to shoot. And a lot of these things I'm describing to you are visual, and the reason I'm doing that is because the audio description does a really poor job of it. The audio description comes in and does some things, and I like the voice, but there are times where there are gaps in dialogue and nothing's happening, and the audio description team didn't feel like there was anything to describe. And this is so unfortunate because so much work went into this film on a production design level, you know, with the building of these sets and these costumes and recreating the look of the series, that how do you not have anything to describe? Like, this is the problem, is that when you look at audio description on a basic route of he enters, she enters, he talks to her, you know, like that kind of thing, that's so base. Like, and that's really all this is. You know, I also kind of hate the old rules of not telling people who they are. It's like, well, you showed up for the Flintstones. You know, I mean, is it a secret that he's Barney Rubble? God, it refers to him as like the blonde man for um I don't know, for a while until somebody uses his name. I'm like, he's an iconic character. Fred and Barney are like well-known iconic characters. Just use his name. Like, why is that so hard? I don't get it. I've never gotten that's a dumbass rule. It led to America Ferrera being like unnamed for the duration of Barbie. A thing that I will never, ever let go. I will never let that go. She had a name in the credits, and she goes the whole time as either being listed by her job or listed as being a mom. She's never named during the entirety of Barbie. And sometimes I know somebody wrote that rule in a book a long time ago with the best of intentions, but when you write a rule and people take it as gospel and they don't actually, no common sense is then applied to it as being like, well, should we do this? Do you know what I'm saying? Um, then you get into situations like this. And there are plenty of times in this movie where I'm not talking about little gaps, I'm talking about big gaps where you could have easily put substantial audio description about what we were looking at and chose not to. And while I love the music to Flintstones, because it's reminiscent of the TV series, we'll still get it. But we can get it along with some audio description. I don't know what's up with this track, but I don't like it. Um, and this is coming from somebody who's seen Flintstones north of 10 times. So a lot of this was coming back to me visually, and I was sitting there thinking, like, did they even describe Fred's pelt? His, like, iconic orange pelt that he wears with the black dots on it? I don't know. I mean, some of the stuff was described. I think Dina was described as being purple. Um, but you know, I mean these characters all have iconic looks. They're usually wearing specific colors. You know, Betty's usually seen in like a light blue. Um, Elizabeth Perkins as Wilma always has that red hair. You know, Barney's got his sort of like basic brown, and he's shorter than Fred, shorter in stature than Fred. Um, and I don't know, I just Bam Bam and Pebbles as well being in this. I just kind of wanted more. You know, I wanted so much more. Now, what I will point out is that every time it made a pun, that was included in the audio description. Like all of those puns were included. The like Steven Spielrock or whatever it was, a Steven Spielrock production, and there was what was I can't think of how they changed George Lucas's name, but it was like Tar Wars, Chevrock. You know, I mean, like they kept coming up with ways of taking things that we knew in 1994, brand names or people, and switching it over, you know, to where it was something for Bedrock. And I love that they, at the end of the film, they thank people from Bedrock. They're like, we'd like to thank the citizens of Bedrock. Um, and that was read off. So like some of those puns were all there, and that was good. But I kind of want people to know what this all looked like. You know, a lot of work went into this set, and it looks fantastic. And I just kind of felt like it was really underdescribed, and they had plenty of opportunities to describe things in better detail than what they were describing them. So I would have said take another pass at this. You know, push it back, do more. But that's because there are these clear gaps in the audio description, and I'm talking about like little like, you know, pause for 2 seconds and be like, who could you have thrown in like a Fred Winks, you know, or something like that. But I'm talking about like substantial blocks where you could be like, they drive down the city streets of Bedrock looking at short houses with, you know, I mean, like you had time in certain parts, lots of time. So this is definitely a desert island movie for me because I define that as movies that make me happy, like rainy day type movies, and I love putting this movie on. I'd watch it with or without audio description because honestly, I this is one of those movies that has ingrained itself so much that when I started listening to it, like it wasn't that I've had more visual recall for films, but this was pretty high for me. This was like 75%. I had a lot of images of like who looked like what. There were a couple times where I wasn't sure what somebody was wearing in a certain scene. But I kind of remembered everything. Like I remembered Katharine Hepburn and how she looked, but I couldn't remember what she was wearing, if that makes any sense. Like, but I remember like her hair in not Katharine Hepburn. Jesus, she was also had her final film in 1994, Love Story. Elizabeth Taylor. So I couldn't remember what she was wearing, but I can remember sort of like how she looked as the mother. Anyway, that's it. That's what I got. Um, Lots of good little references, including what Flagstone, which was originally the name of the series were the Flagstones, and then they changed it to Flintstones. So, yeah, it's way better than whatever the internet is trying to tell you to be. Although a 5 on IMDb is not that, I just don't want it to go lower than that. Like that's the lowest that I will accept for this movie. Like I just, it's not. I don't even think it's a 5. I think this should be at least in the 6 range. I don't know why it's so low. I think people are just. I have no idea why this movie's so low. Anyway, um, but it's an A+ for me. It's a desert island movie. I reveal these things. I'm honest. It has a lot to do with nostalgia. It has a lot to do with when I grew up as a kid, as would a lot of films for people. If you remember and can assign certain places and times to things, there are people who are going to be younger than me. They're going to like different sets of films and say that those are comfort films for them. And there are going to be people who are older that are going to say those are comfort films for them because they grew up with them. So this was my generation, and I love this movie. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I'll see you guys on the other side.